But you would be shocked, Pierce, at some of the names that I have seen that came across the DOJ in emails that the DOJ is protecting. And we're talking about people on both sides of the aisle. We're talking about famous people, rich people, people in power, prime ministers, former presidents, et cetera, media personalities that are named in these files. And that's why I say
Donald Trump demands absolute loyalty above all else, yet he refuses to offer a single shred of it in return. This is a brutal lesson that every Trump stooge and sycophant eventually has to learn the hard way. Today it was Nancy Mace's turn to watch her career being dismantled by Donald Trump. She has continued to be oppositional to this administration, not only on the issue of the Epstein files but also in her public calls for the resignation of several of her fellow Republican members of Congress. I want to dive into exactly how Donald Trump has secured his revenge on Nancy Mace. It seems he is now perfectly willing to destroy any Republican who so much as utters the word Epstein in a way that displeases him. Honestly, that should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. We are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. But before we get into the specifics of how he's ending the career of a Republican who has historically gone to bat for him, we need to look at the context. This retaliation is partially a response to what Nancy Mace said in this clip right here.
But you would be shocked, Pierce, at some of the names that I have seen that came across the DOJ in emails that the DOJ is protecting. And we're talking about people on both sides of the aisle. We're talking about famous people, rich people, people in power, prime ministers, former presidents, et cetera, media personalities that are named in these files. And that's why I say this is going to go down as the greatest cover-up, one of the greatest cover-ups in American history. And I don't believe the girls are actually going to see justice, which is why it's going to be incumbent upon people like Democrat Ro Khanna, Republican Thomas Massie. I'm a Republican myself who's willing to name some of those names in our committee work, on the floor of the House, whatever it takes, because this kind of thing cannot continue to go on. I want to give the next girl hope that when she comes forward, she won't be shamed. Her life won't be smeared in the Daily Mail or whatever the next press, is going to do. What they do to female victims and to children is disgusting, because they're protecting their rich and powerful friends. But you'd be surprised, shocked even at some of the names.
Nancy Mace has consistently denied the obvious truth that Donald Trump is covering up the Epstein files to protect his own skin. Mace, much like Lauren Boebert, continues to peddle the lie that Donald Trump is doing this for some mystery reason that they just can't seem to articulate. Even though they supported Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they are still playing this dangerous game. They know for a fact that the Epstein files are being suppressed, they know they're being hidden, and they know the law is being broken, which means Donald Trump is breaking the law. Yet they flat out refuse to connect the dots. They won't admit that maybe, just maybe, he's doing this because he's guilty. Maybe he's continuing to obstruct justice because of what he did in the past. That is Nancy Mace's great sin in the eyes of this movement. Of course, she signed on to the discharge petition, but she's also been incredibly combative with other Republican members of Congress. She went so far as to give a floor speech calling for the resignation of one of her colleagues. And as we're seeing now, that is one of the primary reasons Donald Trump just decided to get his revenge. Rep. Corey Mills says he won't resign from Congress amid an ethics probe into misconduct allegations. Mills is facing a potential expulsion vote. He said he won't follow in the footsteps of 3 House colleagues who resigned over various allegations of misconduct in recent days. GOP Rep. Nancy Mace of South Carolina introduced a resolution Monday to expel Mills from Congress. The swamp has protected Corey Mills for far too long and we are done letting it slide, Mace said, announcing the resolution. She also had this to say about Corey Mills.
On February 19, 2025, Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department officers were called to resolve a private matter at Representative Corey Mills' residence, where officers were called to the 1300 block of Maryland Avenue Southwest around 1:15 p.m. for the report of an assault. Whereas police reports obtained by NBC4 Washington confirmed that the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department was investigating Representative Corey Mills for an alleged assault of a 27-year-old woman that took place on February 19, 2025 at the residence of Representative Corey Mills. Whereas the first police report provided to NBC4 Washington by a source and confirmed by a second source familiar with the investigation said that the 27-year-old woman accused her significant other for over a year of having grabbed her, shoved her, and pushed her out the door. And also said that the woman involved showed the officer bruises on her arm, which appeared fresh.
So Nancy Mace has been, and you could easily argue this, significantly more combative than your average Republican. But let's not get it twisted. She is still at her core a staunch Trump stooge. She has always been willing to go to bat for this administration when it really counts. Sure, she made some noise about not wanting to see boots on the ground in Iran and suggested that maybe the war was going a bit too far, but for the most part 98 or 99% of the time she is backing Donald Trump to the hilt. But as we see time and time again, that loyalty is never returned. It's the same brutal lesson that Nancy Mace is learning right now, the same one every other Republican who hitched their wagon to Donald Trump has had to face. The rule in Trump land is simple. Unless you are spending every waking second kissing the man's feet, you are going to be thrown under the bus. And that is exactly what just happened to her. Donald Trump just pulled the rug out from under Nancy Mace, and it's likely going to cost her her entire political career. Ron Filipkowski, the editor-in-chief of Midas Touch, wrote, Trump gets his revenge on Nancy Mace for signing the discharge petition to release the Epstein files by endorsing her opponent in the South Carolina Republican gubernatorial primary. Trump wrote, quite frankly, highly respected and very popular Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, Pam Yvette, is an America First patriot who has been with me from the beginning. She never wavered, never let me down, and was the only South Carolina gubernatorial candidate to endorse me as soon as I launched my 2024 presidential campaign. So obviously Donald Trump is not endorsing Nancy Mace, and this is a very clear slight against her, saying that he's doing it because of loyalty. Filipkowski also wrote, Tillis, Green, Cassidy, Massey, Cornyn, Mace, Trump is settling all family business in 2026. It is very clear how this endorsement is being reported. Trump snubs Nancy Mace and endorses Pamela for South Carolina governor. So Nancy Mace has officially been thrown under the bus by Donald Trump. And let's be honest, he was never actually going to endorse her. I'm just surprised he chose to meddle in this relatively high-stakes primary in South Carolina so early. But Donald Trump is making his reasons glaringly obvious. He's praising Pam Bondi, saying she never wavered, she never broke, and that quite frankly, Pam was loyal, and we all know how much he loves loyalty. That is the entire reason right there. Nancy Mace's slight deviation. And look, I know voting for the release of the Epstein files is a bit more than just a slight deviation. Cost her everything. Nancy Mace isn't just running for another term, she's fighting for her political life. If she loses this primary, it is over. It is done. No more Nancy Mace in Washington. Honestly, I'm smiling a little bit at that prospect. Now I'm glad she spoke out even slightly against the war on Iran, and I'm glad she signed that discharge petition for the Epstein files. But let's be real about who she is. Nancy Mace is a deeply unwell individual. She has multiple ethics complaints hanging over her head. There is an ongoing investigation into the way she mistreats her staff. By the way, stay tuned because there's another unhinged Donald Trump post I need to break down in a second. He's currently losing his mind over losing the Kennedy Center. But back to Mace. Reports say she's the kind of person who sends her staff out at 3 o'clock in the morning to buy more booze for her parties. Now look, it might be a social crime to run out of drinks at a party, but layering that on top of abusing your assistants, forcing them to work insane hours, and reportedly making them clean your personal Airbnbs, that's another level of toxic. Nancy Mace has a lot of personal issues to work through. And hey, it's okay to have stuff, but you shouldn't be working through it while representing people in Congress. She's addicted to attention and loses her cool constantly. It's just not a good look for the country. And again, this all circles back to the Epstein files. Her simple desire for more answers, not even direct accusations against Trump, just asking for the truth, was enough for him to end her. Speaking of the search for truth, in the context of the Pam Bondi hearing today, I think what Ro Khanna had to say was incredibly important before we get to that final Trump meltdown.
Well, first of all, on a human level, I wished her well in her recovery from cancer. What we wanted here was just answers to help the survivors. And what she told us is that Todd Blanche was really managing the whole thing. So we need to ask Todd Blanche questions. She also told us, surprisingly, that the FBI it scrubbed a lot of the documents or held a lot of the documents before they got to the Justice Department. That means that we need to ask Kash Patel, why were those documents redacted or what documents were missing? And then finally, when pressed on whether some of the individuals should be prosecuted, whether they should be investigated, she deferred to Jay Clayton, who's the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. And so we need to ask him, what is going to happen to the people who raped or abused or trafficked the victims?
We need real answers. We need Pam Bondi to answer under oath on the record and on video. We need the same from Todd Blanche and the same from Kash Patel because they are continuously trying to obfuscate, lie, and misdirect us. They know that we know they're still engaged in a massive cover-up. Pam Bondi's act today didn't fool anyone. What was particularly interesting though was how she tried to shift some of the blame over to Todd Blanche. Now look, I know Pam Bondi is a career liar, but I wouldn't be shocked if she wasn't as deeply entrenched in the Epstein files as we originally thought. And that Todd Blanche, acting as Donald Trump's personal attorney, was actually the one pulling more of the strings. To me, that doesn't sound wild at all. It actually makes perfect sense. But Donald Trump wasn't even focused on the Epstein files today. He wasn't really thinking about his war either. He certainly wasn't losing any sleep over the economy, the cost of living crisis, or the struggles of everyday Americans like you and me. No, he was fixated on the Kennedy Center. He had himself a total meltdown today as his latest vanity dreams fell apart right in front of him. I want to close with this second unhinged Trump post, and let me tell you, the man is absolutely livid. Trump wrote on Truth Social, and I am sorry to all of y'all who don't like it when I do the voice, I just have to because he's melting down in this one. Quite frankly, shockingly, a judge appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, Christopher Cooper, who sounds like a nice guy, ruled that the Kennedy Center, which was going to close in early July for large-scale renovations, and notice how Donald Trump just called it the Kennedy Center because that's what it is. It's not the Trump Kennedy Center, it's just the Kennedy Center. But he says it was going to close for large-scale renovations and construction due to years of neglect, delay, and poor maintenance, and which was to be transformed by the Trump administration into the finest facility of its kind anywhere in the world, is not allowed to close for these renovations, which would not be possible to properly do without such a closure. Additionally, Judge Cooper ruled that the 36-member board of trustees, which unanimously voted to add the name Trump onto the former Kennedy Center, making it the Trump Kennedy Center, did not have the right to do so or make such an addition, and the name Trump must be removed. Oh, he's so sad. Not even Donald Trump has the audacity to call it the Trump Kennedy Center, probably because even for him that sounds completely ridiculous. He's not trying to halt those renovations because he actually cares about the building. He's doing it because a judge correctly ruled that he has zero authorization over it. That 36-member board was entirely handpicked by Trump and Melania just to rubber stamp his every whim. So, let's be clear, this isn't some Trump derangement syndrome or a targeted hit job, it's simply basic accountability and the law being applied. But honestly, I'm thrilled to see that this is where Donald Trump is putting all his energy. Forget the midterms, ignore the cost of living crisis, let's just obsess over the Kennedy Center. Donald Trump is really putting together a compelling campaign strategy here, isn't he? Everything is fundamentally falling apart within the MAGA movement, and the cracks are turning into canyons. We are going to continue to expose all of this on this show. If you want to support our mission and this channel as always, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. If you've stuck around until the very end, drop a blue heart in the comments so I know who's still in this fight with us. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'm Liam Prescott, and I'll see you in the next one.